I'm Derek, 68 years old, a retired construction contractor who built the house my family called home for over 3 decades. After my wife Alice passed away 3 years ago, my daughter Amanda and her husband Jeffrey moved in to help me adjust. I welcomed them with open arms, never suspecting they'd betray me. When Jeffrey told me to leave so his parents could move in, I felt my world collapse. But sometimes, life gives you a chance to stand your ground when you least expect it. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you believe family loyalty should never be sacrificed for convenience. I've always been a self-made man. Started my construction business with nothing but a pickup truck, a toolbox, and determination. Worked my way up from small renovation jobs to building entire housing developments. My greatest pride wasn't the business success, though. It was the house I built with my own 2 hands 35 years ago. Every nail, every board, every detail of that 2-story colonial on a quiet street in Franklin had my personal touch. I designed the layout specifically for Alice, making sure the kitchen had the morning sunlight she loved. I crafted the oak staircase banister myself, spending weekends carving the intricate patterns Alice had admired in a magazine. When Amanda was born, I added a nursery with a ceiling that mirrored the night sky, tiny fiber optic lights forming the constellations. The house wasn't just a structure to me. It contained my history, my heart. The living room fireplace where Alice and I would talk for hours on winter evenings. The backyard oak tree with the swing where Amanda took her first steps. The basement workshop where I taught my daughter to build her first birdhouse. Every corner held memories that kept Alice alive for me, even after she was gone. When cancer took her, it happened fast. 6 months from diagnosis to the day I held her hand for the last time. The doctors called it aggressive. I called it cruel. 3 years ago, but sometimes it feels like yesterday. Those first months alone nearly broke me. I'd wake up reaching for her. I'd cook meals for 2 out of habit. I'd start telling her about my day before remembering she wasn't there to listen. The silence in that house was deafening, Amanda noticed. She'd visit more frequently, often staying overnight. "Dad, you shouldn't be alone," she said one Sunday dinner. "Jeffrey and I have been talking. Our apartment lease is ending next month. What if we moved in with you? Just temporarily, until you're back on your feet." I hesitated initially. Amanda was 32, a dedicated nurse at the county hospital working long shifts. Jeffrey was 34, jumping between marketing jobs, never quite finding his footing. They'd been married 5 years. And though Jeffrey wasn't the son-in-law I'd imagined for my daughter, she seemed happy. That was enough for me. "You'd be doing me a favor," Amanda insisted. "The commute would be shorter for me. We'd save on rent while Jeffrey looks for better opportunities. And you'd have company." Looking back, I should have noticed how Jeffrey remained silent during these conversations, letting Amanda make the pitch. I should have recognized the calculating look in his eyes as he surveyed the house. But grief had dulled my usual instincts. Having them move in breathed life back into the house. Amanda cooked meals like her mother used to. We watched baseball games together on weekends. For the first time since Alice died, the house felt like a home again. 6 months after they moved in, I made what I now recognize as a crucial mistake. I added Amanda to the house deed as co-owner. Not an equal share, I kept 75% while giving her 25%. It seemed like the responsible thing to do. She was my only child, and I wanted her to have security. I never imagined it would become a weapon against me. "Dad, you didn't have to do this," she said when I showed her the papers. "The house will be yours eventually anyway," I replied. "This just makes things simpler down the road." Jeffrey's eyes lit up when he saw the deed. "That's incredibly generous," he said, suddenly interested in the conversation. Again, I missed the warning sign. The first year went relatively smoothly. Amanda worked her nursing shifts, often picking up overtime. Jeffrey landed a marketing position at a local firm, though he complained about the pay and his boss regularly. I kept busy with my woodworking projects in the basement workshop, creating furniture for Amanda and Jeffrey's bedroom, even building a custom entertainment center for the living room when they mentioned wanting one. The first major argument happened when I returned from a fishing weekend with my buddy Harold to find the living room completely redecorated. The comfortable leather sofa Alice had picked out gone. The family photos on the mantel rearranged and some removed. The walls painted from warm beige to stark white. "We thought we'd surprise you," Jeffrey said, not sounding apologetic at all. "The old style was a bit dated. The words stung. This wasn't just about furniture. It was about erasing Alice, erasing our history together. "You should have asked me first," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We live here too," Jeffrey replied. Amanda agreed it was time for a change. Amanda looked uncomfortable but nodded. "The house did need freshening up, Dad. We didn't think you'd mind." I minded. I minded deeply. But I swallowed my objections, not wanting to create tension. "Just ask next time, please." Jeffrey nodded, but his slight smirk told me everything I needed to know. The battle lines were being drawn, and my daughter was slowly being pulled to the other side. A year into our living arrangement, the dynamic shifted dramatically. Jeffrey received a call from his parents in Arizona. They were facing financial troubles after his father Martin lost his job and their adjustable-rate mortgage payments skyrocketed. "They might need to stay with us for a while," Jeffrey announced at dinner one evening, not asking, telling. "How long is a while?" I asked, trying to sound neutral. "Just until they get back on their feet," Jeffrey said vaguely. "They're good people. You'll like them." I'd met Martin and Linda exactly once, at Amanda's wedding. They seemed pleasant enough, if a bit distant. "It's a big house," I conceded. "We can make it work temporarily." Amanda squeezed my hand gratefully. "Thanks, Dad. It means a lot to Jeffrey." What started as a discussion about a temporary visit slowly morphed into something more permanent. Jeffrey began clearing out the guest room, then discussing renovations to the attached bathroom. When I questioned the expense for temporary guests, he became defensive. "We should make them comfortable while they're here." Amanda agrees with me. Amanda, always caught in the middle, would offer weak smiles and change the subject. I noticed she worked more overtime shifts, avoiding the growing tension at home. Meanwhile, Jeffrey became increasingly territorial about the house. He rearranged furniture without asking, made decisions about yard maintenance, and once threw out tools from my workshop that he deemed cluttering the space. When I confronted him, his response chilled me. "Amanda and I need to make this house work for our future. We can't keep it as a museum to the past." I found my possessions moved without permission. My favorite reading chair was suddenly in the basement because it didn't match the living room aesthetic. Photo albums of Alice and me were boxed and stored in the attic because they were collecting dust. Each change felt like an erasure of my life, my history. I tried talking to Amanda privately. "Honey, I feel like I'm being pushed out of my own home." "Dad, you're overreacting," she said, though she wouldn't meet my eyes. "Jeffrey just has a strong vision for how things should be. He's trying to help modernize the place." "But this is my house," I reminded her gently. "It's our house now," she corrected, referencing the deed. "And we all need to compromise." But the compromises seemed increasingly one-sided. One evening, I overheard Jeffrey on the phone in the backyard. "Yeah, we're still dealing with your dad's house," he was saying to Amanda, who must have called from the hospital. "Don't worry, I'm handling it. Soon it'll feel like ours completely." The words sent a chill through me. In Jeffrey's mind, this wasn't my house at all. It was a prize to be claimed. Still, I tried to maintain peace. I kept my opinions to myself when Jeffrey installed a massive television that dominated the living room. I said nothing when he converted the small garden where Alice grew herbs into a patio for his barbecue grill. I retreated more and more to my workshop, the one space that remained primarily mine. Then came the health scare that changed everything. Chest pains sent me to the emergency room where Amanda worked. Nothing serious, stress and elevated blood pressure, but they kept me for 3 days of observation and tests. When I returned home, I discovered my bedroom had been partially cleared out. My closet was half empty, my bookshelves thinned, my personal items boxed. "We needed to make space for Mom and Dad's things," Jeffrey explained casually. "I moved some of your stuff to the basement. You don't need all these clothes anyway." I stood in my altered bedroom, feeling like a stranger in my own home. This wasn't just inconsiderate, it was calculating. They'd taken advantage of my absence to further erase my presence. "You had no right," I said, my voice shaking. "Actually, we did," Jeffrey replied coldly. Amanda agreed it was necessary. When I confronted my daughter, her eyes welled with tears. "Dad, I'm sorry about the timing. We should have waited until you got home. But Jeffrey's parents are bringing more belongings than we expected. We need the storage space." "So my things get displaced? In my own home?" "It's not just your home anymore," she said quietly. "Please try to understand. Jeffrey feels like you don't respect him as the man of the house." the man of the house. The phrase knocked the wind from me. When had this shift occurred? When had I been demoted in my own home? I retreated that night to my workshop, running my hands over the tools I'd collected over decades, the projects I'd completed, the wood I'd shaped and formed. This space, at least, was still mine. Or so I thought. Amanda became increasingly distant, working double shifts, picking up night rotations. When she was home, she sided with Jeffrey more frequently. The daughter who once came to me for everything now treated me like an inconvenient housemate. I began to feel like a ghost in my own home, invisible except when I created obstacles to Jeffrey's plans. The house I'd built with love was becoming a battleground where I was steadily losing territory. My 68th birthday arrived on a crisp October day. I expected a small celebration, nothing extravagant, just acknowledgement of the day. Instead, Amanda worked a double shift at the hospital. Jeffrey mentioned having important client meetings and left early. I spent the day alone, trying not to feel sorry for myself. That evening, Amanda brought home a store-bought cake and a gift card to a hardware store. Jeffrey arrived late, barely acknowledging the occasion. They both seemed distracted, exchanging glances throughout the awkward little celebration. "Everything okay?" I asked as Amanda cut the cake. "Fine, Dad. Just tired," she said, avoiding eye contact. Jeffrey changed the subject abruptly. "We should talk about the house situation tomorrow. Get some things sorted out." Amanda shot him a warning look, which he ignored. "What house situation?" I asked. "Tomorrow," Amanda said firmly. "Let's just enjoy Dad's birthday tonight." But there was nothing to enjoy. The atmosphere was tense, the conversation stilted. They retreated to their room immediately after cake, leaving me to clean up alone. The next morning I found them both sitting at the kitchen table, unusually awake for a Saturday. Jeffrey had papers spread before him. Amanda looked like she hadn't slept. "Morning," I said cautiously, pouring myself coffee. "Take a seat, Derek," Jeffrey said, gesturing to the chair across from them. His tone made it clear this wasn't a request. I sat, clutching my coffee mug like a shield. "We have some news," Jeffrey began. "My parents are moving in permanently. They're arriving next weekend." "Permanently?" I echoed. "We never discussed." "It's already decided," Jeffrey interrupted. "They've sold their house in Arizona. The market was right." I looked to Amanda, who was studying the table surface intently. "And where exactly are they staying long-term?" "The guest room isn't suitable for a permanent arrangement." Jeffrey exchanged another glance with my daughter before continuing. "That's what we need to discuss. We think it would be best if you found your own place." The words didn't register at first. "My own place?" "A smaller place," Jeffrey continued smoothly. "Something more manageable for someone your age. An apartment maybe. Or one of those senior communities. You're asking me to move out of my own house?" My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. "Dad," Amanda finally spoke, tears in her eyes. "We've talked about this extensively. The house is too big for just you. Jeffrey's parents need help. It makes more sense for you to downsize." "Downsize? From the house I built with my own hands? The house where your mother and I raised you?" "You can't live in the past forever," Jeffrey said dismissively. "Amanda and I are thinking of starting a family soon. We need the space. And with her name on the deed, we have the right to make these decisions." My heart felt like it was being crushed. "You're using the deed against me? I added you out of love, Amanda, to protect you. And I'm trying to protect you now," she insisted weakly. "Living alone isn't good for you. A senior community would give you activities, friends your age. I don't want to be warehoused with strangers." I stood up, my chair scraping harshly against the floor. "This is my home. I built it. I own 75% of it." Jeffrey's face hardened. "And Amanda owns 25%. As her husband, I have say in those decisions. We've consulted a lawyer. We can force a resolution if necessary." "A lawyer?" The betrayal deepened. "You went behind my back to a lawyer about forcing me from my home?" Amanda was crying openly now. "We didn't want it to come to this, Dad. But you're being unreasonable." "I'm being unreasonable?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You want me out by when?" "The end of the month would be ideal," Jeffrey said, as if discussing a minor inconvenience. "My parents arrive next Saturday." 2 weeks? You're giving me 2 weeks to leave the home I built?" "We can help you pack," Amanda offered, as if that made it better. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The room spun around me as the full impact hit. My daughter and her husband had plotted against me. They had consulted lawyers about forcing me from my home. They were choosing Jeffrey's parents over me. "I need some air," I managed to say, walking out the back door before they could respond. I spent hours walking the neighborhood, past houses I'd watched being built, families I'd known for decades. My phone buzzed repeatedly with texts from Amanda, but I couldn't bear to read them. When I finally returned home, no, not home anymore, just the house, I found papers on my bed, apartment listings, brochures for retirement communities. As if they'd been planning this for months, waiting for the right moment to spring it on me. I locked my bedroom door and sat on the edge of the bed, holding a photo of Alice. "What would you do?" I whispered to her image. For the first time since her death, I was grateful she wasn't here to witness our daughter's betrayal. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went to my workshop around midnight, turning on just one small lamp. I sat surrounded by my tools, my projects, the tangible evidence of my life's work. The chest of drawers I was building for Amanda's birthday would remain unfinished now. My chest ached. My hands trembled. The workshop that had always been my sanctuary now felt like the last outpost before exile. In the morning, I called my old friend Harold. We'd worked construction jobs together in our 20s before starting our separate businesses. He'd been trying to get me to join his poker nights since Alice died. "Need a place to stay," I said when he answered, my voice rough from a sleepless night. "Just temporarily." Harold didn't ask questions, just said, "Guest room's yours as long as you need it." I began packing that afternoon. Each item I placed in boxes felt like putting pieces of myself away. The watch Alice gave me for our 25th anniversary. The collection of history books I read before bed. The hand-knit sweater Amanda had given me years ago, back when her love didn't come with conditions. Jeffrey's parents arrived while I was still packing. Martin and Linda Sullivan, both in their mid-60s, looking uncomfortable as Jeffrey showed them around my house. I overheard him tell them, Derek's downsizing to something more appropriate for his situation. The humiliation burned as I carried boxes past them to my truck. Linda offered a sympathetic smile. Martin looked away. They knew what was happening but accepted the narrative Jeffrey had spun. The final straw came when I went to my workshop to pack my tools. Martin was there with Jeffrey, discussing how they would reconfigure the space. "Martin's a hobbyist woodworker too," Jeffrey explained, as if that made everything okay. I looked at my workbenches, my carefully organized tools, the half-completed projects. "Those are my tools," I said quietly. "I'm taking them with me." "All of them?" Jeffrey frowned. "Surely you won't have space for everything in an apartment." "Martin could make good use of them here." "They're not negotiable," I said firmly, finding strength in this last stand. "I built this house with these tools. They go where I go." Jeffrey started to argue, but Martin raised a hand. "The man's right. Tools are personal." At least he had that much decency. I spent my last night in the house sleepless again, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of strangers moving about in what had once been my sanctuary. In the morning, I loaded the last of my tools into my truck and drove away without saying goodbye. As I pulled out of the driveway, I glanced back at the house one last time. Alice's rose bushes were already gone, replaced by some modern landscaping Jeffrey had ordered. The blue front door we'd chosen together had been painted gray. Even from the outside, it wasn't my home anymore. Harold's guest room was comfortable enough, a queen bed, a small desk, a closet with enough room for my reduced wardrobe. But it wasn't home. I spent the first week in a fog, sleeping too much, eating too little, ignoring Amanda's increasingly frantic texts and calls. "You can't hide out here forever," Harold said on the 8th day, standing in the doorway of the guest room where I was staring at the ceiling. "You need to fight back." "Fight how?" I asked listlessly. "They've won. The house is gone." Harold, never one for gentle approaches, yanked the curtains open, letting in harsh sunlight. "The Derek Wells I know wouldn't roll over like this. The Derek Wells I know would stand his ground." "That Derek Wells had something to stand on," I muttered. "Bullshit," Harold said flatly. "You own 75% of that house. You have rights. Amanda's name is on the deed. Jeffrey said they talked to a lawyer." "So talk to your own damn lawyer," Harold countered, tossing his phone onto the bed beside me. "My niece Julia. She's a real estate attorney. Tough as nails. Call her." I stared at the phone. "What's the point? It'll just create more bad blood with Amanda." Harold sat on the edge of the bed, his expression softening slightly. "Listen to me," That girl needs a wake-up call. What they did to you isn't right. Sometimes being a good parent means teaching hard lessons. The next day, I found myself in the office of Julia Winters, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with a no-nonsense manner that reminded me of Alice. So your daughter and son-in-law forced you out of a house you built and still own 75% of, she summarized after I explained the situation. And they've moved his parents in without your consent. That's about the size of it, I confirmed. Mr. Wells, you have options, Julia said, leaning forward. Strong options. I don't want to hurt Amanda, I said quickly. She's still my daughter. And you're still the majority owner of that property, Julia countered. Have you heard of partition by sale? I shook my head. When co-owners of property can't agree on its use, either can force a sale through court action. As the 75% owner, you have significant leverage. The court would almost certainly rule in your favor. Force a sale? The idea hadn't occurred to me. You mean sell the house entirely? Exactly. The proceeds would be divided according to ownership percentage. You get 75%, Amanda gets 25%. But that would mean none of us keep the house. Julia nodded. That's often the cleanest resolution when co-ownership becomes untenable. It prevents the majority owner from being held hostage by the minority. I sat back, considering the implications. Selling the house I'd built with my own hands felt like another loss. But continuing to let Jeffrey and Amanda profit from pushing me out felt worse. I need to think about this, I said finally. Of course, Julia replied, but don't think too long. The longer they establish themselves there, the messier this becomes. I drove back to Harold's house in a daze, my mind racing with possibilities. The house had appreciated significantly over the decades. My 75% would give me enough to buy a comfortable new place and still have savings. Amanda and Jeffrey would lose their power play, though they'd still walk away with a substantial sum. But could I really force the sale of our family home? The place where Amanda grew up? The last physical connection to my life with Alice? Harold was waiting on his porch when I returned. Well, what did Julia say? I explained the partition by sale option as we sat drinking beers in his backyard. Sounds like exactly what you need to do, Harold said immediately. Hit him where it hurts. It's not that simple, I protested. It's still my home. All my memories with Alice are there. Your memories aren't in those walls, Derek. They're in here. Harold tapped his temple. What's in that house now is a daughter who betrayed you and a son-in-law who orchestrated it. His words stung because they contained truth. The house I loved had already been changed beyond recognition. Jeffrey had removed or altered most of what made it special to me. I know a guy who might be interested in that property, Harold continued. Marcus Donovan, real estate developer. Looking for lots in established neighborhoods for small commercial projects. Location like yours would be perfect for the medical offices he's planning. Commercial development? They'd tear down the house? Harold shrugged. Probably. But isn't that better than watching Jeffrey and his folks live in the mutilated version of your home? At least this way, you get to control how the story ends. That night I lay awake thinking about Harold's perspective. The house I'd cherished was already gone in many ways. The blue door, Alice's roses, the living room where we'd spent countless evenings, all changed or erased by Jeffrey's modernizing. What remained was just the shell, and now that shell housed people who had conspired to push me out, people who had taken my generosity and twisted it into a weapon against me. The next morning I called Julia Winters. Let's discuss that partition by sale option further. 2 days later, I met Marcus Donovan at a coffee shop. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with an energetic handshake and direct manner. Harold speaks highly of you, he said as we sat down. Says you're a straight shooter. I try to be, I replied. He also says you've got a prime piece of property that might be available soon. Corner lot in Franklin? Near the medical center? I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. It's my home. I built it myself 35 years ago. Marcus's expression softened slightly. That can't be easy to part with. It wasn't my first choice, I admitted. My son-in-law had other ideas. I explained the situation briefly. Marcus listened without interrupting. Family situations can get complicated, he said when I finished. For what it's worth, I'd be interested in the property if you decide to go the partition route. The location is perfect for the medical offices we're developing. 3-story building, upscale design, would enhance the neighborhood's value. He named a figure that made my eyebrows rise. The housing market had been strong, but commercial development value was even higher. That's substantially above residential market value, I noted. Marcus nodded. The location justifies it. Corner lot, proximity to the hospital, good traffic pattern. It's exactly what we're looking for. As he showed me preliminary sketches of the type of building he envisioned, a plan began forming in my mind. Not just a legal strategy, but something more poetic. Jeffrey's planning a housewarming party this weekend, I said, remembering the Facebook invitation Amanda had sent that I'd ignored, showing off their new home to friends and family. Sounds uncomfortable for you, Marcus observed. Actually, I said slowly, it might be the perfect opportunity. That night, I called Julia again to set things in motion. The next day was spent gathering documents, signing papers, and preparing for what would either be the most satisfying or most devastating confrontation of my life. The emotional toll was heavy. I barely slept the night before the party, questioning and re-questioning my decision. Was I being petty, vindictive, or was I simply standing up for myself after being pushed too far? By morning, resolve had replaced doubt. I showered, shaved, and put on my best suit, the one I'd worn to Alice's funeral and Amanda's wedding. If I was going to reclaim my dignity, I wanted to look the part. Harold drove me to the house, with Marcus following in his own car. "You sure about this?" Harold asked as we parked down the street. I looked at the house. My house with balloons tied to the mailbox and cars lining the driveway. I've never been more sure of anything. We timed our arrival for 1 hour into the party, when everyone would be settled but before any guests started leaving. I could hear music and conversation as we approached the front door. My heart pounded, but my steps remained steady. I rang the doorbell to my own house, a surreal experience that brought home how much had been taken from me. Jeffrey opened the door, a drink in hand, his smile freezing when he saw me. Behind him, the entryway was filled with people holding glasses and plates. "Derek," he said, recovering quickly. "This is unexpected." "I imagine it is," I replied calmly. "Aren't you going to invite me in?" His eyes darted to Harold and Marcus. "This isn't really a good time for—" "It's still my house, Jeffrey," I interrupted, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "I don't need an invitation." A hush fell over the entryway as I stepped past him, Harold and Marcus following. I saw Amanda across the room, her conversation stopping mid-sentence as she spotted me. Her face paled. Jeffrey's parents were near the fireplace, my fireplace looking confused and uncomfortable. Martin set his drink down and straightened, as if preparing for confrontation. "Dad," Amanda said, hurrying over, "what are you doing here?" "I came to the housewarming," I said pleasantly. Seemed appropriate since I built this house. Jeffrey moved beside Amanda, putting his arm around her shoulders in what looked more like restraint than comfort. "Derek, if you're here to make a scene—" "I'm not here to make a scene," I said, raising my voice enough to be heard by everyone in the room. "I'm here to make an announcement." The party had gone completely silent now. Every eye was on me. For those who don't know me, I'm Derek Wells. I built this house with my own hands 35 years ago for my late wife Alice and our daughter Amanda. I gestured around the room. Every detail was crafted with care. The crown molding in this room took me 3 weekends to perfect. The hardwood floors were hand-selected, board by board. Jeffrey tried to interrupt. "Derek, this isn't—" "I'm not finished," I said firmly. 2 weeks ago, Jeffrey and Amanda informed me I needed to leave my own home so Jeffrey's parents could move in. Despite the fact that I owned 75% of this property, they consulted lawyers about forcing me out. They gave me 2 weeks to pack up decades of memories. Murmurs spread through the crowd. I saw shock on several faces. Amanda looked mortified. Jeffrey's expression had hardened into anger. What Jeffrey failed to mention to his parents, and apparently to all of you, is that as majority owner, I have options. I turned to Marcus. "This is Marcus Donovan, a real estate developer specializing in medical office complexes. He's very interested in this property." Marcus stepped forward with a professional smile. "The location is ideal for our newest project. 3-story medical offices with underground parking. We're prepared to offer substantially above market value." Jeffrey's face flushed red. "You can't sell the house without Amanda's agreement. She's on the deed." "That's where you're wrong," I replied, nodding to Harold, who handed me the legal folder. "I've filed for partition by sale. When co-owners can't agree on property use, either can force a sale through court action. As 75% owner, the court will almost certainly rule in my favor. I removed the legal papers and held them up. These papers outline the process. The house will be sold, the proceeds divided according to ownership percentage. I get 75%. Amanda gets 25%. No one gets to stay. The silence in the room was absolute. Amanda's hands covered her mouth in shock. Jeffrey's parents looked from me to their son, confusion giving way to understanding. Martin Sullivan was the first to speak. "You told us Derek wanted to downsize," he said to Jeffrey. "You said he was happy with the arrangement." Jeffrey's mother stood up straight. "You said he suggested we take his room because it was larger." "He did," Jeffrey insisted, his voice rising. "He just changed his mind." "That's a lie," I said quietly. "I never agreed to leave my home." Amanda stepped away from Jeffrey, tears streaming down her face. "Dad, we can talk about this. We can find a solution that works for everyone." "We're past that point, Amanda," I said, my voice softening slightly for her. "You chose your side when you let him push me out of my own home." Marcus cleared his throat. "If I could interject, our offer is time-sensitive. We'd need to move forward within 30 days to stay on schedule with our development plans." Jeffrey's father approached his son, his face tight with anger. "You lied to us. You made us complicit in forcing this man from his home." "I was trying to help you," Jeffrey protested. "You needed a place to stay." "Not like this," Linda said, her voice shaking. "Not by stealing another man's home." The party guests began to shift uncomfortably, some making excuses to leave, others watching the drama unfold with undisguised interest. Jeffrey made one last attempt to regain control. "This is ridiculous. You can't just walk in here and threaten to sell the house out from under us. We have rights." "So do I replied. "Rights you chose to ignore when you decided my home was yours to take." I turned to the room at large. I apologized to everyone for interrupting the celebration. It seems the housewarming was premature. Amanda broke away from Jeffrey and approached me, her eyes pleading. "Dad, please, don't do this. We can work something out." For a moment, looking at my daughter's tear-streaked face, I faltered. She was still my little girl, despite everything. But then I remembered the boxes in Harold's guest room. The casual cruelty of being told to leave the home I'd built. The betrayal that cut deeper than any pain since losing Alice. "The time for working things out was before you chose Jeffrey's plan over your own father," I said quietly. "Actions have consequences, Amanda. This is yours." With that, I placed the legal papers on the coffee table, the new glass one that had replaced the oak table I'd built, and turned to leave. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer," Jeffrey called after me, desperation in his voice. "I look forward to it," I replied without turning around. As the three of us walked back to our cars, Harold clapped my shoulder. "You did good in there. Stood your ground." Marcus nodded in agreement. "For what it's worth, Mr. Wells, we'll make sure the new building is something you can be proud of. Quality construction. Design that complements the neighborhood." I looked back at the house one last time. Through the window, I could see the party in disarray. Jeffrey gesticulating wildly, his parents standing apart looking disturbed. Amanda sitting alone on the couch, her head in her hands. The victory felt both hollow and necessary. I hadn't wanted this outcome, but I wouldn't allow myself to be discarded so easily, either. "Let's go," I said to Harold. "I think I've made my point." The aftermath of the confrontation was both immediate and far-reaching. By the time Harold and I returned to his house, my phone was flooded with messages from Amanda, alternating between apologies, pleas, and accusations. "You humiliated us in front of everyone," one text read. "How could you do that to your own daughter?" Another, sent minutes later. "Please call me, Dad. We need to talk about this rationally." Jeffrey's parents checked into a hotel that same night, refusing to stay in what they now understood was essentially a stolen home. According to Amanda's distraught call, which Harold encouraged me to answer, they were barely speaking to Jeffrey. "Martin called him a disgrace," she sobbed into the phone. "They're talking about going back to Arizona and living with Jeffrey's sister instead." "Actions have consequences," I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady despite the pain of hearing my daughter cry. "But the house, Dad. You can't really mean to sell it. All our memories are there." "The memories didn't seem to matter when you were redecorating everything and pushing me out," I pointed out. "You can't have it both ways, Amanda." The legal process moved forward despite Jeffrey's attempts to block it. He hired a lawyer who filed motions to delay, claiming emotional distress and arguing that the sale would cause undue hardship. Julia Winters countered each motion efficiently, presenting evidence of how I'd been forced from my own home without consent. "The judge isn't sympathetic to their position," she informed me during a meeting 3 weeks after the confrontation. "Especially after we submitted the evidence that they consulted lawyers about forcing you out while you were still living there. It appears premeditated, which doesn't play well." While the legal battle unfolded, I experienced a turbulent mix of emotions. Vindication. Certainly I'd stood up for myself instead of accepting the role of discarded parent. But also profound sadness. The relationship with my daughter was damaged, possibly beyond repair. The house I'd lovingly built would indeed be sold, though not in the way I'd originally intended for it to pass to the next generation. Harold, seeing me sitting silently on his patio one evening, brought out 2 beers and sat beside me. "Penny for your thoughts." "Just wondering if I did the right thing," I admitted. "Maybe I should have found another way." "What other way? Let them walk all over you? Live in some depressing apartment while they enjoy the home you built?" Harold shook his head. "You did what you had to do. They forced your hand." "But Amanda made her choice," Harold interrupted firmly. "She chose Jeffrey's scheme over your well-being. That's on her, not you." After a month of avoiding direct contact, Amanda asked to meet me at a neutral location, a coffee shop, halfway between Harold's house and what had been our family home. I arrived early, finding a quiet corner table where we could talk privately. She looked exhausted when she arrived, the dark circles under her eyes reminding me of how she'd looked during nursing school finals. She'd lost weight too, her scrubs hanging loosely on her frame. "Thank you for meeting me," she said softly, sliding into the chair across from me. "You're still my daughter," I replied. "That hasn't changed, despite everything." Amanda twisted her wedding ring nervously. "Dad, I need to explain some things. Not to excuse what happened, but so you understand." I nodded for her to continue. "Jeffrey wasn't always like this," she began. "When we first married, he was kind, supportive, but he's always struggled with feeling inadequate. His father's success was a shadow he couldn't escape. When we moved in with you, I think something shifted. He saw the house, the workshop, everything you'd built with your own hands. It was another reminder of what he hadn't accomplished. So he decided to take what I built instead of building something himself," I observed. Amanda winced but nodded. "I didn't see it clearly at the time. He started small redecorating, making changes. Said it would help you move forward after Mom died. Then it became about making the house ours. When his parents faced foreclosure, he saw an opportunity to be their savior. At my expense." "Yes," she admitted, tears welling. "He convinced me it was for the best. Said you'd be happier in a community with people your age. Said the house was too much for you to maintain alone. I knew it was wrong, but I let myself believe him because it was easier than standing up to him." "You were always stronger than that, Amanda," I said quietly. "I thought I was," she whispered. "Somewhere along the way, I lost myself in trying to keep the peace." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of her admission hanging between us. "Jeffrey and I are separating," she finally said. "After everything that happened at the party, things fell apart quickly. His parents left the next day. They're staying with his sister in Phoenix now." I felt a complex mix of satisfaction and sorrow. I hadn't wanted to destroy her marriage, despite my feelings about Jeffrey. "I'm sorry it came to this," I said, meaning it. "I'm the one who should be sorry," Amanda replied, wiping away tears. "And I am, Dad. So deeply sorry for betraying you, for not standing up for you when it mattered." 2 days later, I received notification from the court. The partition by sale had been approved. The house would be sold, with proceeds divided according to ownership. Jeffrey had exhausted his legal options for delay. Marcus Donovan's offer was formally accepted the following week. As the reality of selling the house sank in, I found myself driving past it occasionally, watching as a sold sign appeared on the lawn. The blue spruce tree I'd planted when Amanda was born had been removed, another piece of history erased. With my share of the proceeds, I found a comfortable 2-bedroom ranch-style home in a quiet neighborhood 10 miles from the old house. It wasn't large, but it had a detached garage perfect for converting into a workshop, and a yard where I could plant new trees if I wanted. The day I signed the papers for my new home, I felt a bittersweet sense of moving forward. This house had no memories of Alice, no traces of the life we'd built together. But it also had no shadows of betrayal, no echoes of Jeffrey's voice claiming what wasn't his to take. "It's a fresh start," Harold said as he helped me move in furniture we'd purchased to replace what had been left behind. New home, new chapter. As I arranged my tools in the converted garage workshop, I found myself agreeing. The old house had become a battleground, tainted by conflict. This new space was mine alone, unmarked by past struggles. Amanda visited the day after I moved in, bringing housewarming gifts, a new coffee maker, kitchen towels, small things to make the house feel more like home. Her wedding ring was noticeably absent. "It's nice," she said, looking around. "Cozy." "It's a work in progress," I replied. "But it's mine. No one can push me out of this one." Her face fell at the reminder, but she nodded. "You deserve that security, Dad. I'm so sorry I helped take it away before." The road to rebuilding trust with my daughter would be long. The wounds were deep on both sides. But as she helped me unpack boxes in the kitchen, I felt the first tentative steps toward healing begin. 6 months after the confrontation at the housewarming party, my new house had become a home. I'd built custom shelves in the living room, installed ceiling fans in each bedroom, and painted the walls in warm colors that reminded me of the original family home before Jeffrey's modernizing. The workshop in the converted garage had become my sanctuary once again. I'd completed several projects, a dining table for my new house, a rocking chair for the front porch, and most recently, a small jewelry box as a peace offering for Amanda's birthday. Our relationship was healing, though the process was slow and sometimes painful. We'd begun having Sunday dinners together at my house every other week. The first few were awkward, conversations stilted, the weight of the past hanging between us. But gradually, we found our way back to something resembling the closeness we'd once shared. Amanda had filed for divorce from Jeffrey, a process that was nearly complete. She'd moved into a small apartment near the hospital, focusing on her nursing career and, as she put it, figuring out who I am without Jeffrey's influence. "I let him reshape me," she admitted during one Sunday dinner. "I became someone who would help push her own father out of his home. That's not who I want to be." I reached across the table to squeeze her hand. "We all make mistakes, Amanda. The question is whether we learn from them." The house I'd built, meanwhile, was gone. Marcus Donovan's company had begun construction on the medical offices, and I drove by occasionally to watch the progress. The first time I saw the empty lot where my home had stood, I felt a sharp pang of loss. But with each subsequent visit, the pain dulled. "It's just a structure," I reminded myself. "The memories remain." An unexpected development was my growing friendship with Marcus. What had begun as a business arrangement evolved into genuine camaraderie. He respected craftsmanship and often asked my opinion on construction details for the new building. "We're incorporating some elements inspired by your original house," he revealed one day over lunch. "The corbels under the eaves, similar to the ones you hand-carved. The receptionist desk in the lobby will use the same oak species as your original staircase." These small tributes meant more to me than he could know acknowledgments that what I'd built had value, had beauty worth preserving in some form. Jeffrey's parents had permanently relocated to Phoenix. According to Amanda, they'd apologized profusely for their unwitting role in what happened, ashamed of having benefited, however briefly, from the scheme to push me out. "Martin said he would never have agreed to move in if he'd known the truth," Amanda told me. "He said no decent man would take another man's home." Jeffrey himself had moved to Chicago after the divorce proceedings began, taking a marketing position with a firm there. He'd made no attempt to contact me, which was for the best. I wasn't sure I could ever forgive him, though I'd stopped actively wishing him ill. The energy required for hatred was better spent on rebuilding my life. The legal battle and its aftermath had taught me painful but valuable lessons about family, boundaries, and self-respect. I'd always believed that family meant sacrificing for one another, putting others' needs before your own. Alice and I had raised Amanda with those values. But I'd learned that sacrifice without boundaries leads to exploitation, and that sometimes the most loving action is standing firm. "I think the hardest part," I confided to Harold one evening as we sat on my new porch, "was accepting that loving Amanda didn't mean I had to accept being mistreated, that I could fight for myself without stopping loving her." Harold nodded thoughtfully. "Most parents would have given in, let themselves be pushed aside to keep the peace. You showed her something important by refusing." "What's that?" "That she's responsible for her actions, even toward family. Maybe especially toward family. That's a lesson she needed." I considered this. I never wanted to be her teacher in such a painful way. Sometimes the most important lessons hurt the most, Harold replied. Look at her now standing on her own 2 feet, making amends, becoming the woman you raised her to be. He was right. Through the painful process of losing the house and nearly losing our relationship, Amanda had found her strength again. She'd stopped allowing Jeffrey to make her choices, stopped prioritizing peace over principle. As for me, I'd discovered resilience I didn't know I still possessed. At 68, I'd started over. New house, new workshop, new daily routines. The loss of the home I'd built had forced me to build something else, a stronger sense of self, boundaries that couldn't be bulldozed by others' demands, a life that honored Alice's memory without being imprisoned by the past. The woodworking business I'd started, almost accidentally, had begun to flourish. What began as projects to furnish my new home expanded when neighbors admired my work and commissioned pieces. Now I had a small but steady stream of orders for custom furniture, keeping my days full and purposeful. One Sunday evening, as Amanda helped me wash dishes after dinner, she paused, soapy plate in hand. "I'm proud of you, Dad," she said softly. "For what? For standing up for yourself. For not letting us steamroll you. For building this new life." She gestured around the kitchen. I needed to see that example. I thought about her words long after she left that night. In losing the house, I'd found something more valuable, self-respect that couldn't be taken away, strength that didn't diminish with age, the knowledge that I could begin again even when it seemed too late. The house I'd built with my hands was gone, but what I'd built within myself remained and had grown stronger through the trial by fire. Have you ever had to start over when you least expected it? How did you find the strength to rebuild? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to share in more journeys of resilience and renewal. Life's toughest challenges often reveal our hidden strengths. I found mine at 68, proving it's never too late to stand your ground and begin again.